Tri-City Sports, Tri-City Sports Now. I'm Marky Billson, and on the line with me now is Robert Gagliardi, who is a columnist, and he writes about the Wyoming Cowboys for the Casper Star-Tribune, or if you prefer, because this is how you get them in the Tri-Cities, wyosports.com. I believe I'm correct about that. That's where I read his recent story about what was wrong with the Wyoming Cowboys, who come in tonight's Sun Bowl tournament down in El Paso to play 8-4 ETSU with only a 3-7 record, although it does include a, and again, it sort of seems like these days, who doesn't beat South Carolina? A banged-up team. They've had a whole different look than what they thought that they were going to start off with. But I have to ask you, Robert, to begin with, we were talking off the air. It's only been a few years since Wyoming made the NCAAs. Now they're 3-7. What's happened to the Cowboys since then and now?
Well, that NCAA tournament team was a special group that had built for that for a couple of years, and then after that it was a little down. But then when Alan Edwards took over as coach for Larry Scheid, who's been on Larry's staff for the last 5 or 6 years, it got off to a good start. They won 26 games their first year, 23 games the first year, won a CBI championship, returned a lot of guys from that team, won 20 games last year, and even though there wasn't any postseason, there was still progress made, winning more, finishing better in the Mountain West, winning in places in the Mountain West that they hadn't in a while. But they knew going into this season where they just lost a lot of seniors. So, but there was some veterans back, but not a ton, so they knew it was going to be, kind of a rebuild or just kind of one of those transition years, and then it seemed like the floodgates opened with injuries and odd injuries, not just one of their starting centers, who basically missed, only played in 9 games last year. He had chronic back issues. He was healthy, things were going well, and their one exhibition game that they had.
Yeah.
Stuff in 25 years of covering college athletics or any freshman. Hunter Thompson, he's a kid from Wyoming who they're very high on, gets a concussion in their first game in the second half and is out for 4 games. So basically, for the first 5 or 6 games, Wyoming's playing with a 6'5" guy. You're like, okay. Then later on, he's done.
Mm-hmm.
There was one player's been suspended. One player leaves because he's homesick and wants to pursue his professional career in Australia, where he's from. I mean, there's just been things that you see a lot of weird things in sports, but I don't know. In just the span of about a month, I don't think I've never seen anything quite like this. And now it's just 8 guys. They just added a walk-on today that will suit up. I don't know if he'll play, but I mean.
Well, let me ask you, Robert Gagliardi of wyosports.com, who is that new walk-on? So, I mean, when watching the game, we can gauge where the Cowboys are in terms of depth, or even what his perception on the team is if he gets into the game.
His name is Casey Henry. He's a redshirt sophomore, a 6-foot guard from an in-state product from Wingo, Wyoming, a small town on the eastern part of the state. So, he will be on the trip, and he will be in uniform and could play. Now, I'll just say this, Marky, if he plays, it's probably not a good thing for Wyoming. Let's just say that.
Okay.
They need guys to practice. They just need bodies right now. But he's on the trip. He will be in uniform tonight. But I would venture to guess that if he plays, maybe that's really good for East Tennessee State, but it certainly probably won't be very good for Wyoming.
Okay, well, that's good to know. I mean, Mladen Armis, who is a player similar, he had a nice college career, or excuse me, high school career in Knoxville, but he's outside shot. And I thought that, but yeah, you don't expect him to play. Excuse me, I said Armin. I've got my players wrong, because Mladen Armis is actually somebody who could start at center. What am I talking about here? Anyway, for the Buccaneers here. So let me make that suspended briefly. Do these players look to play against ETSU? Has there been a determination that you know of?
No, neither will play. Hunter Maldonado is out 4 to 6 weeks with ongoing back issues. He's had back spasms all season. Times he's played, there's times he hasn't. There's times he's played 30 minutes when he could barely walk. I mean, he's just who would probably be the starting point
of a game. I know that Wyoming and Tennessee do have a history between each other in football. The Tennessee Volunteers, since that's the glamour college team around here, they do play the Vols many years ago, and the first game after Tennessee won the national title 20 years ago that they played in 1999 was against Wyoming, as well as the fact that Wyoming really, I think, sent Tennessee into a real tailspin back in 2008 on the gridiron when they defeated the Volunteers in Neyland Stadium 13-7. Where I'm going with this here, Robert, is I wanted to ask in Wyoming playing ETSU or even Tennessee, with Wyoming fans, I mean, do they hold any of those games, let's say that victory against the Vols?
to a certain extent just based off the name recognition. Back then, and I covered all those games that you mentioned. I mean, both teams weren't very good that year, just matter of factly. But no, when you being at Wyoming in the Mountain West, when you're going to play, quote unquote Power 5 schools in any sport, whether it's football or basketball, when you pick up wins like that, whether they're struggling or not, sure they hold high regard in that. And that was a nice win from Wyoming against Tennessee that year. And even I remember that year when after the Vols won the national championship, covering that game, and certainly have the name recognition. But if Wyoming fans are smart, and I know the majority of them are, this Tennessee State team, look, I know it doesn't have the name recognition as the University of Tennessee or other SEC schools, but, looking at their numbers, this may be, at least to this point, now Boston College, when Wyoming played Boston College earlier this year in Florida, that was a very good team. Oregon State was a solid Pac-12 school. This may be Wyoming's best non-conference foe to this point, and I'm not just saying that to blow smoke. I mean, just look at their numbers. They're very balanced scoring. They're getting contributions from a lot of guys off the bench. At this on paper, Marky, and I'm thinking, whether this is a very good basketball team that Wyoming's going to face tonight, and maybe some fans don't get the name recognition stuff, but I think whether they're watching it or they're there or they're listening to the game tonight, they may quickly find out that this is a very good team, and Coach Forbes has done a great job there. They've gone to NCAA tournaments. They're winning 23, 24 games a year. This is a solid basketball program, no matter where you look at them. Take away the name recognition. So I hope Wyoming fans are aware of that tonight, because to me, this may be the best non-conference bowl they face to this point.
Well, that's high praise. As I mentioned, South Carolina, and I know that they are having a down year, but they were recently in the Final Four. I mean, Evansville is a respectable program. You mentioned Boston College before. Even Oregon State has been on the Wyoming schedule so far. So I want to, though, ask, in this Sun Bowl tournament, the host team, UTEP, they won a national championship back in the 60s, very historic Texas Western team, the first all-black starting five, defeating Adolph Rupp's Kentucky team. But I have wondered if maybe ETSU wasn't the glamour program coming in, even if they don't have quite the name recognition that a Wyoming will have, simply because it's the university has a long ago national title. And so I want to ask, do you think that ETSU is the team to beat in this tournament, or dare I say even the glamour program, Robert?
Oh, I think, I would think right now, I would agree with that. I think UTEP, bringing in Rodney Terry for the Miners, who was at Fresno State, who I, covered in the Mountain West. Rodney Terry will get it turned around, but I think there's some work to be done there. I think it was set up for UTEP to, and Wyoming's certainly not bad, but, I think, if UTEP faces, East Tennessee State in the championship game, tomorrow, absolutely. East Tennessee State, to me, is the best team in this group of four, and I'm not sure if you can even make a strong argument that anyone else is at this point. So, I think these are good games, and again, I know in the scope of the national landscape of college basketball, there may not be a whole lot of attention paid to it. This is a good East Tennessee State team. I think Rodney Terry's going to how much of that reflection will be tonight and in this tournament, just based on everything that's happened so far.
Well, remember with Terry also, it was said that the UTEP athletic director, Jim Center, who is aware of what Steve Forbes has been doing at ETSU from his days at the Citadel, since Citadel and ETSU are both Southern Conference members there, Robert, remember that, don't comment about it, but that his first choice actually was Forbes, and Steve Forbes is now making a comfortable mid-major salary of $650,000, and looking at the fact that he had something built pretty well right now at ETSU, as well as, where is it easier to win at these days, ETSU or UTEP? He basically told him thanks, but no thanks. So that's another storyline, perhaps around this tournament and such. You mentioned the injuries that, and also even people like, and help me with the gentleman's name, but I think it's Laval Deng. He was the Australian who said, you know what? I think I want to go back to the land down under. I don't like the way the toilets swirl up here, that sort of thing. I wanted to ask, though, I know that Wyoming has been a team of streaks. So's ETSU. They had a big lead late against Creighton, and it washed away. So tell us a little bit why you think Wyoming might be inconsistent. Is it just trying to find the right starting five, what with all the injuries and departures, or is it something else, do you think, Robert?
Well, I think, it's part of that, certainly, and then also trying to mix in some of these younger guys. I think going into the season, Coach Alan Edwards was hoping that maybe not to the point where they're at now. With the injuries and everything like that, it's also forced them to play a lot more zone defense, which I think honestly, I think is a good defense for this team right now, because it keeps some guys out of foul trouble, and for some of these younger going on, so. But what's really hurt this team is just is really more on defense. Offense really hasn't been a huge issue for this team. There's times where there's scoring droughts and this and that, but it's just the consistency on defense. And playing zone hurts. This team isn't the best rebounding team by any stretch, and even when they're healthy, maybe not the most physical, powerful rebounding team around. But I just think it's just a lack of consistency within the lineup, and then also just getting some of these guys to get it, so to speak, defensively. And that's kind of the ups and downs you deal with injuries, and then also trying to deal with some younger guys. But when they have put it together, and unfortunately it just hasn't been as consistent as I'm sure the coaches would like it, it's still a fairly solid team, even though the record doesn't indicate it. But it's just been a struggle. Other than maybe the South Carolina game, It's been a struggle for this team to really consistently put 40 minutes together.
Well, we are talking to of WyoSports.com, Robert Gagliardi, and he is a leading columnist at. What is the town that you write from there? Because I know that you actually, WyoSports.com, it's actually sent out to several newspapers in Wyoming. But what is the location that you are actually in?
I'm based in Laramie.
Okay.
And just a little correction, WyoSports is the combination of the papers in Cheyenne.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But
I'm sorry.
Good guys up there. They're good guys up there.
Forgive me, because forgive me with that. That's a product of my unfamiliarity with the combination, and I was, trying to say, well, what are the newspapers there? And so it is my mistake. I thought that WyoSports was involved with the Casper Star Tribune, but no, Laramie and Cheyenne. Yes, I know where they are. I know Cheyenne is sort of the uncentered state capital and such, and anyway. But I did want to, you mentioned the inconsistency and all this. You mentioned also zone defense, which ought to work well for Patrick Good. And Patrick Good, by the way, was at Thursday's practice more than a half hour early, practicing his jump shot, was the local product for ETSU. But the other question is, how well is Wyoming rebounding these days? You mentioned the injured centers that they have had. That's been a strong suit for ETSU for much of the year, and they even got a 7-footer this past week in Gessen. But can you rebound? Where do they rank?
Well, they're pretty much right around the bottom right now. Unfortunately, they're not rebounding the ball really well. They're only averaging about 33 rebounds a game, and it's kind of a gang rebound philosophy. I mean, Justin James is kind of he's one of the better players out, but at 6'7", he's leading the team. He's healthier in the center, but like Hunter Thompson, their 6'10 redshirt freshman, in 37 minutes in their last game against Denver, which included overtime, he only had 1 rebound, and that's some of that. And this team is rebounding well, or at least hanging in there on the glass. They're gang rebounding. You know, it's everyone involved. It's guards, it's forwards. It's not just one guy or maybe 2 guys. It's everyone involved. And at least the way this team is built right now, that's probably the best way for them to do it. Just think that's going to be a big issue. They're not really strong on the offensive glass, but, you know, their philosophy is, look, you know, not that they'll never crash it, but they don't make a huge effort because they want to get back on defense and not give up transition baskets. So, you know, this isn't the best offensive rebounding team in the world, and obviously, you know, looking at the numbers, you know, right around there a game, that's a big concern for Wyoming going into this game. But when this team is rebounding well, or at least battling on the glass, you know, hanging in there, it's all men on board. It's getting those defensive rebounds. That's been their key to success, at least so far.
Well, I will say this, much as big league sports towns or sports areas, Wyoming, and for that matter, the Tri-Cities, Tennessee area, but these are the 2 teams that represent the big leagues, I guess, for both Wyoming and the Tri-Cities. Wyoming and ETSU. ETSU is a 6.5-point favorite. I want to thank Robert Gagliardi for sports.com. You can read his story after the game, or you can read about his column previewing what's wrong with the Cowboys. That's one of the things that I read before today, and I liked it a lot. And yeah, it seems like they are suffering from Murphy's Law. We'll see how they do against ETSU. Coming back, and remember, we'll be talking about head coach Eli Drinkwitz in the next hour.